earth-shatteringly big news. You probably know the name DivaCup, but it's not a cup. It is the new Diva Disc. So I don't know what you expected when you saw a new video upload, but it probably wasn't that DivaCup was coming out with a menstrual disc. There are so many features to go over for the new Diva Disc. And I also have just like a whole lot to say about the fact that DivaCup is coming out with a menstrual disc. So we're gonna get to that. But first, let's get the introductions out of the way. If you're new here, my name is Kim Rosas and I'm a reusable period products expert. I've been in this field for about 10 years. On Period Nirvana, you're gonna find tons of educational content and reviews to help you get started with menstrual cups or discs. And if you're completely brand new, definitely check out my quiz on periodnirvana.com. It can kind of help you get through all of the noise out there for all these different products and help you find the right one for you. I also run a retail store, Period.Shop, and this is where you can shop for a curated selection of reusable products. Period.Shop is so excited to be the only other retailer that will have Diva Disc during this exclusive period of direct-to-consumer launch. You'll only be able to buy it from either Period.Shop or Diva's direct-to-consumer website. The review is not sponsored in any way, though, I will add that. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe or else you'll miss big news like this. Now for the part that you've all been waiting for, let's talk about the brand new Diva Disc. There is so much to go over. If you are not a fan of rambling, I am not the YouTuber for you. What makes this so exciting is that this is the first new product that Diva has come out with in basically 2 decades. They had the original DivaCup, they launched the teen model, which was a smaller version of their cup. Other than that, they really haven't designed any new products. But the climate here in the menstrual product world is very, very competitive, and it has grown exponentially even in the last 5 years, 10 years, even in the last 2 years. There are just so many brands and so many new products. And as an older established brand, it's probably getting a little harder to compete in this massive landscape of new products. And not all the new products are good. Not all the new brands are good, which is why I do what I do to help people kind of cut through the noise. But it was definitely time for Diva to look at their product line and say, we really need something else. And the fact that they have decided to go with a new disc versus like a different kind of cup says a lot about where menstrual discs are right now in popularity. They are growing. I want to take a tiny, tiny bit of credit for that. I've been championing discs for several years now, and they are becoming more popular. The other kind of notable thing about the Diva Disc, it is in gray. This is the first time Diva has had a product come out in a color for an internal period product. So it is like this almost mauve-y gray. It's an undertone of like a purpley pink. So it's a little hard to pick up. I also want to say I take a tiny bit of credit for gray becoming a very popular menstrual product color. If you're a real one, then you know why. Menstrual discs in and of themselves are not a new product. They've recently become very popular, but they've been around since the 90s with the disposable soft cup. We did see reusable versions, and that has just skyrocketed as well. So now we have Diva coming into the scene with their version of a reusable disc. Again, I cannot stress to you how big of a deal this is. This has been in the works for a long time. I, of course, have known about it for quite a while and had to keep my mouth shut. So happy to finally be able to talk about it. And happy that I'm not accidentally going to leak this product. I have to keep hiding it in my office when I'm doing filming and stuff so that no one sees that there's this unreleased product. I hid it from myself so well that I lost it for actually like 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God, where did I hide it from myself? If you're new to discs, I want to very quickly give you kind of an overview of how they work in your body and how to put them in and take them out. If you already know this, just go ahead and skip to the next chapter, but it might be helpful for those of you who are brand new. Menstrual discs work by folding them long ways to make them narrow like a tampon to insert. With the Diva Disc, you're going to want to make sure that this one goes in with the loop last, because that's what you're going to use to remove it. So you do want to think about that when you put it in, and the bowl part faces up. You're going to insert it into your body, point it towards your tailbone, and then push up and tuck the front rim behind this pubic bone here. With the Diva Disc, it has a loop. So when it's time to remove, you're going to pull that loop to get it out, And that's it. Now I know you're dying to hear about the features of the Diva Disc, and you've probably already picked up on some of them, which includes a new innovative addition to menstrual discs that has not been done before by any brand. Diva is the first to do it. I'll save the most exciting part for last, so you're gonna have to sit through the boring stuff first. So the Diva Disc is meant to be for a low to an average cervix. It's also oblong, meaning that instead of it being perfectly round, like some discs, it's longer on one side than it is the other. So this is 67 millimeters on the longest side, and it is 57 across. That's from my measurements. I do need to get the official measurements, but I measured that with calipers. That's what I got. And Diva Disc holds 36 milliliters as a capacity. Because it is narrower, it does hold less than many other discs, but it still holds more than menstrual cups. One advantage to a menstrual disc that is oblong is that the rotation issue that affects menstrual discs that have a notch is less likely because it is oblong. There are other possible negative side effects of it being oblong, which I'll talk about in the review. But from a moving around perspective, between this being oblong and the fact that it does have a little loop, that should prevent it from spinning. It did for me. Let's talk about firmness. It's on the softer side. It's really hard to nail it down exactly, but I think it's probably a 2. So this is Nixit. Again, it's a softer disc. This is the Diva, and they are pretty similar. Diva Disc is like maybe ever so slightly firmer than Nixit because Nixit has a softer rim. The Diva Disc has a little bit more thickness, so a little bit more firmness, a little more material in the rim, but it's a very slight difference. So it's definitely one of these softer discs out there in terms of reusable discs, and it's going to be a little easier to fold because it is softer. So if you've ever struggled with some of the firmer discs and keeping them folded, a softer disc might be a better option for you. This is a pull loop, and so it is at what will be in the front of your body. So imagine this is in your body. You will be able to pull this loop like that. It sits sort of underneath the rim, and it sits towards the front of your vaginal canal. But it does stick out, so it's possible it could rub. I didn't really notice much. Is rubbing a little bit, but I did notice it a few times. Has a little bit of grip, which is kind of hard to see, and that just helps you get something as you're pulling it out, so it's not completely slick, because everything in there when you're using period discs is going to be a little slippery. And here's what you want to know about. That is the Leakproof Shield. This little leak-proof membrane spans about 1/4 of the way up the disc and across the front rim. Now, if you've used menstrual discs, you probably understand what this is going to achieve or is meant to achieve. When you have a menstrual disc, there's a couple things that can happen. One is a phenomenon called auto-dumping. Auto-dumping happens when you have a menstrual disc in, and if it's a little too big or a little too small, your muscles can squeeze against it and push it down, and blood leaks. But when you have the shield, that is designed to prevent that auto-dumping action. And of course, this is also meant to prevent any accidental leaks. It can help when you are removing the disc as well to prevent any sort of spillage onto your hands. As you're removing a disc, it can slip out, but this holds some of it back. So it's definitely either going to be a no mess experience or a less messy experience. This is one of the only discs that you have a higher likelihood of no mess, which most discs can be messy to remove. So this is adding something to the market. Since this disc is just launching, I did want to share something. I worked with Diva on something really cool, and it'll be the first time you can get a spot in Canada, and that'll be through Diva's website, not Period.Shop, or you can get it in the US from Period.Shop. It is an exclusive little Diva spot. So cute. They're all going to be different because the process to make them, it's like a swirling process. So they're going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, a little more swirly veiny, a little less swirly veiny, but they're all in the same color spectrum of gray, meant to coordinate with the Diva Disc. So I've been working on this for a really long time. The packaging is so cute. Oh my gosh. I had so much fun working on the packaging. It's like little tiny Diva discs on it. So yeah, I don't know how long those will last because again, they were made in a limited number, both for my website and Diva's. Obviously, I've had a lot of time to work and review this. I knew when I first received it, it's gonna be something keying into a grievance that exists for people who use menstrual discs. Having this little shield here not only is smart from a marketing perspective, because now they can say, hey, if you've been scared of auto dumping, we have the product for you. But it also can just help with that issue for people who struggle with it or for people who just don't like it. Now, for me, I actually really like self-emptying or auto dumping for discs, but I recognize that people don't all like the same things. And so when I talk about being an advocate for these products, it's not just what I like, it's what other people want or need. And that is something that people want. They want something that is going to prevent that auto dump or that leak. And it's easier to remove because it has the pull tab. And just because I'm very, aware of the developmental timeline here, this was already a feature before the Hello Disc was public. So it basically was, I knew that this was coming with the loop after we had already designed the Hello Disc, but before the Hello Disc was public. And so it was like, well, clearly we are all on the same page when it comes to addressing some pain points. Diva was looking at auto dumping and removal. Hello Disc was looking at removal, but also high cervix issues, people not being able to use a disc with a high cervix. And so again, it's just nice to have these different options available. I know everyone's waiting to hear how it worked for me. If you've been watching Period Nirvana for a while, or have even watched me longer than Period Nirvana, as of recently, I have become more of a menstrual disc fan. I started with cups a decade ago. In fact, my very first cup I ever tried was a DivaCup, and it just wasn't a good fit for me because it was too long. I trimmed the stem, it was still too long. I flipped it inside out, that helped, but it was still too long. Ultimately, I found cups that were better for me because my cervix was a little bit lower than average, and over the years have now moved towards discs. So I just kind of assumed, based on seeing the product, that this was going to work for me. And I think overall, I'd say it did, but I did have a couple of issues that I'll get into. Insertion was really easy. It is a softer disc, so it's very narrow. It inserted without any issues. I was very mindful while putting it in to think about the shield because I was concerned that this would catch on things. If you're concerned, you just want to, when you fold it, make sure it's poking in instead of out, just so it's not snagging on anything. I never had a snagging issue, and I was really aware of that because I was, of course, noting all the things as I was using the product. So if you've used other discs, it's going to be a little bit softer and easier to fold than something with a lot more firmness. This is the Cora disc, for example. This one feels a lot firmer than the Diva disc. And then this is the Diva disc and the Hello disc. When it comes to firmness, there are other things to consider than just how it inserts and how easy it is to fold. It does affect your wear and comfort in some good ways and some bad ways. For softer firmness discs, I think that it can be easier to auto dump when they are not as firm. I did still somehow manage to auto dump, but it made quite a sound when it happened. So it was like I had it all night, so it's probably very, very full. So because I auto dumped, there is some mess around the disc already. But you do have the shield. However, there could still be displacement even though the shield is going to prevent it from spilling out. It doesn't prevent it from tilting, and you may not know that it tilted, like when you know if it's auto dumping that, hey, maybe it did tilt, I need to check it. If it held back enough that it did not leak when you tilted it down, but you didn't notice and you went about your day, you might end up leaking in a different way versus a full flood. It might be a trickle leak until you notice that, hey, this is out of place. And so going to my personal experience, I did have some issues with this being not as firm as other discs I use. Right now, thinking that the failures I'm having are related mostly to firmness because the disc fits entirely perfectly and it's very comfortable. It's slipped twice today. In combination with it being a smaller overall design, instead of being round, it's narrower. It's still is close to the length of what disc fits me the best, which is the Hello disc. It's 68 but round, 68 millimeters but round. This one's 67 but narrow. And so this one did pull out of place for me during certain movements. I could feel that it was out of place, that it was kind of like down here, and I would have to go in and tuck it back up. Another thing, based on the shape, I'm going to guess. This is all inferring from my own review. The first time I used the disc, everything went really well, but it was slightly different version. When I tested the final version of it, I had a few more leaks. And I don't know if it was just because I had a heavier period or what, but they were just very, very light. And so I want to say that on my heavy days, what had happened is that I filled it enough that it would have auto dumped with another brand, but it didn't. So instead it was able to go around these sides and kind of leak out in smaller amounts. What I learned is that with the Diva Disc, I probably should be emptying it sooner than what I would do with another disc that auto dumps on my heavier days. But I didn't know that until I had those leaks. But I did have one particularly big leak that I've never experienced with another disc. And this was something I know has happened to other people. I've seen the horror stories, I've read them, and I've always thought, oh my God, I'm so glad this never happened to me. And then one day it happened to me. I'm back home, home sweet home, bathroom, sweet bathroom. And I just took my medicine and I just like coughed up a storm. And I think something bad happened to my disc. I coughed.
That's unfortunate.
Down.
Not that that flap did not prevent auto dumping. It's that I just completely coughed it out from behind my pubic bone. So when I went to reach in, it's right there at the entrance. So it just went, and then because it was full, because it's a heavy day and I've worn it all day, it dumped over and around that little flap.
And everything that was in it just came out and into my underwear. And because I was so confident with the disc, I wasn't wearing leak-proof underwear like I typically do when I test new cups. I was just wearing regular, normal, non-period underwear.
And because it dumped, it was not a clean removal by any means.
And it being oblong and not firm and smaller is just not as good of a match for staying in place and being leak-free for me as some of the other discs that are larger.
All right, this morning is much better. No auto dumping, and I'm assuming that's because it just was not full. So I had it in all night, but I'm on basically day 3, which means that things are tapering off, so it's just not going to be full enough to do the auto dumping that it did.
That's not to say that it's not going to be a good fit for you, because that's why we have different sizes. It is a smaller size overall, more for a lower or average cervix, and my cervix is a little lower than average, but my vaginal fornix is quite roomy, which is why all these one-size discs work really well for me. The larger diameter discs work really well for me. But what about comfort? I will say this was a super comfortable product. Discs, on the whole, are very comfortable for me. It is very soft, and so firmness, again, doesn't play as big of a role in comfort with discs as they do for cups. A lot of times cups can apply this outward pressure from firmness that makes you feel like you might have to urinate, or just a little bit of bladder pressure, and then you want a softer cup. Because they sit higher in the body, they don't seem to always apply that same level of pressure even when they're firmer. But if you have used a firmer disc and you still feel that pressure, then this is another option because it is softer. So it's very close to the Nixit, as I mentioned. It's a softer disc, but it's also smaller, and it also has that added bonus of the shield and the loop. So if you like the softness of Nixit but maybe need something smaller, or you want something easier to use or less likely to auto dump, then this is your guy. And again, when it comes to removal, I found this Diva Disc to be super, super easy because of the loop. It's easy to find. It's very similar to the Hello Disc worn in the flipped position in terms of like where the loop is. You can reach it really easily. So these are kind of side by side here. You can really see that when you angle them like this, each one is going to be easy to grab and find. With the Hello I'm sort of trained that this fits snugly on my finger, so I can remove it and pull it out with just one go and not worry about it going anywhere. It fits really snug. It wasn't quite as snug and secure unless you put your finger like all the way through it, which is a little harder to do. Typically it's kind of right here. So I would use my thumb to grab it just to make sure it didn't slip off. Oh, shit. Almost dropped it. You take it, you pull it, and then you can engage your thumb, and then you can dump it.
No messy finger this time. And, you know, I use my thumb just because it feels slippery. But you can remove with a single finger. Clean.
I always look for cleanability on products. It was easy to clean. It is like a soft texture on the inside and the outside. It was easy to rinse because there's so much space here. There are like leak-proof rims on cups that make them harder to clean. They're a gimmick. They're a sales gimmick. They don't really prevent leaks because when you remove a cup, it's basically upright anyway. You don't need a leak-proof or a spill-proof rim. These are all gimmicks. With this is not a gimmick. It is like a true helpful part of the design for preventing auto dumping or preventing any spillage as you're removing the disc. And it was also easier to clean. So I have no issues with it whatsoever. And just like any other menstrual disc, you can use this during penetrative intercourse. It is here, it's got a soft basket, it sits higher in the vaginal canal. Because there are now so many different menstrual disc brands, it does not work to go through and compare it to each and every brand. I did take some images. You can find that in the written article, which is on periodnirvana.com. That'll be linked in the video description below. It's very similar in firmness to Nixit, as we discussed. It is easy to remove like Hello Disc, but it's smaller and softer. I'd say shape-wise, it's very similar to the Formunsa that just came out. You're not gonna be able to find this Formunsa in the US, but it is oblong, but a little smaller, and it is softer than this Formunsa. To kind of summarize everything I've gone through, I did enjoy Diva Disc, and I think it's a really brilliant design. I think it's going to have a ton of fans. It has so much promise for people who've been frustrated by auto dumping, for people who've really wanted a smaller disc that's also easier to remove. It's really ticking some of those empty boxes. It does have some crossover with other brands, but I think it's its own thing that is situated, if I were to say like a Venn overlapping diagram, it's definitely on that low cervix, softer firmness end. So we now just have all of these new options. Okay, well, that is it for me. I feel like I've droned on and on. I really hope you enjoyed this first look at the Diva Disc. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe. So next time I have a big exciting announcement, you will be the first to know. You can also follow me on my other social media channels. I am at Period Nirvana on TikTok and Instagram and all of those other places. If you need help with your menstrual cup or disc, we do have a great troubleshooting group on Facebook. It's called Period Nirvana Community. I'll link all of these in the description below if you need resources and help. And I'll also link where you can buy the Diva Disc from Period.Shop. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. It was a little slipperier. And Period.Shop is excited. Blah, blah. Why can't I say these words? I can't say these words.